Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. Before we get to our guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Deborah Baska on the podcast. She reinvented herself at 40. She's also coming to us all the way from Kansas City, which is, probably has better weather than we're having right now. She's a wife, mom, as long as a nationally qualified NPC bikini competitor, and she's fit over 50. I just have to mention that because taking one look at her, you're like, okay, yeah, she does not look like that. I mean, that's just ridiculous. But first of all, before we get started, Deborah, what is the weather like in Kansas City right now?
It's absolutely beautiful. It's, I think, 70 degrees, so it's a little cool and sunny.
God, jealous. I'm so jealous right now. It's about that here, but we just got done with some rain and it's a little bit cloudy now. But why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on what really inspired and what really motivated you to make this change and adapt this healthy and fit lifestyle?
Sure. Well, I actually, when I started reinventing myself at 40, I really did. I had taken a 10-year hiatus from fitness, had my kids, built my career. I was very fit when I was younger. I taught aerobics. I was a dancer, but I just kind of quit all that for about 10 years. And in the meantime, I kind of fell into addictive behavior, alcohol. So when I turned 40, I quit drinking and kind of had all this extra time on my hands, right? And decided that I wanted to get back to being fit and healthy again. And so I started working out, and the stronger I got physically, the stronger I got mentally. And it was just this circle. I changed careers. I just took on all kinds of new challenges, and it's been the best decision ever.
That is so awesome because we have so many different stories about how people are able to get into it, and I just find each one so inspiring. But yours is really just a super inspiring one too. Just proving that, I mean, really, like you said, if you're even if you're at 40, you can get started because a lot of people have that belief where it's like, oh, I'm too old, I can't get into this just because I just can't. But yeah, I mean, we've had people that have started even older than that, but and they still do it. But it's just maintaining that positivity and just saying, hey, you know what, I actually can do this. But one of the questions that I love to ask to every health and fitness guest is that if you were to walk into a gym with 100 people, I mean, there's 100 different ways as to how they got into shape, whether it comes down to their diet, their nutrition, how many reps they did, what exercises they did. I mean, so many little things added up to the overall package that people end up seeing. Was that a struggle for you, just realizing what worked best for you? Because I always say, if you were to walk up to someone and say, hey, what did you train for that? Like it looks amazing. What worked best for them 99% of the time is not going to work as good for you.
No, you're absolutely right. And that's why I have a coach for my competition training. If you just want to be everyday fit, which is amazing, which, I was everyday fit, for 10 years before I got into competition training. Kind of doing the same kind of exercises as, a more generic set is fine. But for competition training in particular, we all our bodies are different. And so I need to work, my glutes more, and this person needs to work their shoulders more, and that one their back more. And I don't work my abs at all. So don't ask me, about my favorite ab exercises because I don't work them at all because I don't need to. So it's all very individual.
That's so lucky that she doesn't have to work abs. I gotta tell. I'm one of those people where I have to, work them into overdrive. And then that sort of leads me into my next question because everyone's genetics are different. So I always love to ask, what was one body part that when you got started training that really, really took off that you don't have to train as much now, besides abs, I should say. But everyone always has that one body part also that just lags behind that they have to train to overdrive to get it to look like any semblance like they work out. I'll give you my examples first. So for me, my back, I mean, just from having jobs all throughout college too, where I was lifting and loading, heavy packages into trucks, you either got a really good back or you quit. Those are basically the two options. But I'm also 6'3", so I mean, my legs are just absolutely shot. Where I mean, I have to train them into overdrive just to get them to look like any semblance like I work out. But what were those body parts for you when you were getting started?
My upper body is the part that just kind of took off. I mean, I never had,
Look at the gun show, everyone. Jeez.
yeah, I never had muscle when I was teaching aerobics back in my 20s, but when I started working out in my 40s, my upper body developed really naturally. And I never did heavy weights either. I mean, people are like, how much are you lifting? I'm like, well, I don't really lift. I just kind of curl and, fives, tens, 15s. But my challenging body part is definitely my glutes. It's, just making them pop. So that's really what we spend a lot of time working on right now.
And yeah, and I always like to say, calves for me too are probably the number one thing, just because that is the most genetic body part I think that anyone's ever had. I mean, you're either born with them or
Yeah,
not. So every time I see someone like walking to the gym with nice calves, I'm always just like, oh, you are so,
yeah.
so lucky. But one of the
Yeah,
things that
I never worked my calves.
God, now, oh, she's one of these people now that I have on the podcast. Good God, I should have profiled her before I had her on. Damn it! But no, yeah, I always say like what my one. I had one guest who then like put like her calves on the table, and their calves were like as big as anyone's thighs, and I was like, okay, we're done with this podcast. Like we're done now. I'm not talking. Like yeah, it's just one of those things where if I see that, it's just ridiculous. But I saw through your Instagram that you do a lot of at home workouts. Is that something that you've always been into, or was it something that you just found to be more beneficial for you?
Well, that's actually how I got started back into fitness. I never, I always was a gym person when I was in my, 20s. And then when I got back into fitness, my husband and I bought a workout program from an infomercial and, P90X. And we just started working out at home. And I loved it. I had a career as a corporate executive, and to be able to just come home after a long day and just go right downstairs and work out. And I got in better shape than I ever had been in before. So I was totally sold on it, and I did. I did that at home workouts up until I started the competition training, and then I headed back to the gym just so I could get access to more equipment.
Absolutely, and I do that too for probably about half my workouts. I got a tiny little setup at my house, but I always say if you were to poll the general public, most people don't realize that to be able to get into shape to go on a prep takes so much hard work, determination, and dedication that 95% of the general public would not be able to do that. But then to go on a prep, you are notching things up to an extreme level when it comes to your diet, your nutrition. I mean, everything has to be so perfect. You have to eat the right amount of food at the right amount of time. You have to, get all of your workouts done. What was that adjustment like going from, sort of, just getting back into the shape of things to all of a sudden now where everything just has to be done and it has to be done so perfectly?
Well, it scared me. It scared me a lot because I come from a background of having an eating disorder when I was in my teenage years, and I was always afraid of the nutrition part of doing something like this, and so I thought I would never ever do it. And then just kind of, well, I did my first competition when I was 50, which was last year, and it happened just from people on social media just kind of talking with me and saying, "Oh yeah, my coach, she has a really flexible way of eating and da 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 da." So it has been really hard. For me, it's the hardest part actually. But you're exactly right. It's a science, and my coach really had to explain to me. I said, I gotta hear it to believe it because I've done well without having to count macros and measure. But she said, we're taking your body to a level that's just every single person on stage is just minutely different, and it all matters. It's all science. So
Yeah.
it's hard.
I know. I even hearing people's stories about it. I mean, it just makes me just appreciate, that lifestyle and that work ethic. But what was probably the biggest nutritional change that you had to make?
Probably the most challenging was to give up Diet Coke.
Yep.
Ooh, I still miss it.
Oh, God, just saying that makes me crave it right now too. But
I
yeah,
know.
that's that. Yeah, that's
I'm
definitely
in
got to
mourning.
be
I'm
one.
in
Oh,
mourning.
yeah, yeah. That's that. Yeah, that's just hearing that right now. Yeah, that is definitely a good one. But when you're getting ready for these shows, I always like to say, the biggest thing. Never would have guessed it in a million years. Learned this, and now I totally believe it. But for so many of these competitors, posing is the hardest thing for them. It's harder than their nutrition. It's harder than their training. I mean, never would have guessed it in a million years until now. But now I always like to compare it to being a perfect driver, where you can be a good driver, you can never be a perfect driver. You can be a good poser, you can never be a perfect poser. It's always ever evolving. What has your experience with posing been like?
I've done a lot of theater, so being on stage is not something that's new to me. But when I started my first posing sessions, I was surprised at how physically demanding it is. I mean, I was sweating buckets. My muscles were more sore than when I did my workout. It is very physically demanding. And I just heard today one of the top bikini pros, she poses 1,000 hours. Like, I mean, that's how much posing work she has done. And she, it's like, oh my gosh, I mean, it really just drives home that it's every little minute tweak to show your body to its finest. It's really it's very fascinating, this whole sport. It's like you said, the detail that goes into it is amazing.
That I know, that is just why I think it's so funny when people just say, "Oh, they just go up on stage and they just pose," but they don't realize how, just everything has to be so that's why I just get frustrated. I'm like, "Okay, watch an episode of my podcast if you think it's so easy and just listen to people tell their stories about how difficult it is." But yeah, we've heard stories, after competitions, that's the most sore that people have ever been.
Yes.
Because we had a guest on earlier today who she was on there for 47 minutes because her last name started with a B. So during call outs, she's the first one that's got to pose, but then she's got to stand there in that relaxed pose for the whole rest of the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, that can be really, really tough. But what is your favorite pose to do, and what is your least favorite pose to do?
My favorite pose is the side pose. Um, I just like, looking over my shoulder and kind of that little sassy look. My least favorite pose is probably the rear pose,
Yeah.
rear facing. Yeah.
I was gonna say the only benefit about that pose is that you can kind of let yourself relax a little bit. Like
Yes.
you don't have to be smiling. You can kind of just be like, oh, I can
Yeah.
breathe a little bit. But yeah, that's that for me too. That would probably be just like the only thing that I could really take out of that. But also now, as you can tell, I'm one of the palest people that you'll ever meet in your life. I mean, I've never been tan a day in my life. Just my thick Norwegian skin. If I go outside, I have to put on, SPF 1 million. I either get a farmer's tan or I get burnt to an absolute crisp. Bodybuilders get to be tan, and I get jealous of that, but it also comes with a cost. But what is that experience like for you and that feeling like when you get that tan on? Because we hear so many stories about how, you see muscles that you never even knew that you had. Everything really seems to pop out. What is that feeling like for you?
I love it. I love being tan. And I've kind of stopped tanning outside just as I've gotten older. But putting that tan on is like you said, you see muscles you didn't even know you had. And I just did a show, like a little fashion show this past weekend and got all tanned up. And again, being in prep right now, seeing my muscles pop last weekend, it was like, wow, I really am making progress.
Yeah, and I mean, I just can't imagine what that feels like. But then the negative, I mean, you basically have to become a statue. You can't sit on anything. You can't lean up against anything. I mean, you got
Yeah.
to bring your own bed sheets a lot of the time. I mean, it's just the struggle that it goes through is really real. But another thing that just really just boggles my mind is that, people don't realize that you are at your weakest when you're up there on the stage. I mean, just through all the dieting and through all of the depletion, what does that feel like when you're walking up on stage? I mean, is it just hard to train your mind to just keep going because you are at an extremely exhausted point in your journey, basically?
Right. I think for me, I feel more mentally exhausted than anything because by the time you're on stage, you've gone through peak week and you have been so 100% focused on food, and in the last 24 hours, you've been depleted of water. It's just like mentally just trying to stay the course of the whole eating thing. For me, that's the most challenging. You get this adrenaline high, so I don't personally feel that physical effect the day of the show. I feel that afterwards.
No, yeah, I mean, that's just again something that I would never really understand. But when you go on stage, and because some people are only on stage for 30 seconds to a few minutes, but does that 30 seconds or 2 minutes feel like forever when you're on that stage?
Yes, it does, especially when you are, like you said, kind of just posing and waiting for the other women to do their thing, and you're just standing there. It's like, or the smile. The smile's probably one of the hardest things too.
I was gonna say, yeah, your jaw muscles are probably one of the things during prep that really gets worked the most, just because you have to be constantly smiling the whole time too. So yeah, I can't. Yeah, that just sounds awful to me. But again, just another thing on the checklist of like what these people have to go through to get to these shows. But I also love to ask every guest on my podcast, whether they be, bands, up and coming musicians, or health and fitness people. For my bands, I always like to ask, what is that feeling like when you get to go on stage and perform in front of, hundreds to thousands of people? But that also applies to the bodybuilders too. What is that feeling like when you get to walk up on stage and show off all of that hard work that you've worked months upon months for?
Well, I like being on stage. Like I said, I've been a performer all my life, and so that's kind of what we live for. Is that moment when you've done your very best. You feel a lot of pride, and it's different than being in a like a musical theater show because it's not exactly 100% choreographed, and it's really you connecting with the judges. So it feels personal, like you and the judges, but yet there's all these other people out there, and it's awesome when you hear people like shout your name, and and clap for you. I'm like, I didn't know I had that many friends out there. Well, you don't, because everybody's so supportive. So they're all just very giving you all kinds of love.
And that can just be so important too, especially when it comes to that motivation to keep up with the sport. But the most important question that I ask, and again, you know, this would be so much better if it would be more on Instagram, but a lot of people don't realize that look that you guys put when you go on stage, that is not sustainable. You're not going to be able to look like that 365 days out of the year. Now, granted, there are some people that try to do that and, you know, their careers don't last long at all because, you know, the effects that it has on your body. But I think there's just that myth because they don't do the research that's just like, okay, they just look at the stage photos and they're like, oh, they must look like that, you know, like 24/7 with the amount that they work out and put into it. But what was that like for you when you first realized that, you know, like, hey, this look that I put on stage, it is not going to be sustainable and I am going to have to put on weight. Was that a struggle at first and has it gotten easier as your bodybuilding journey has evolved?
Well, I did my first show in November, and then my second one I did in April. And so after the November show, definitely, you know, went back through that phase of gaining weight, and I started to worry because again, I had this is my first season of doing this, so it's all new, and it can be very emotionally and mentally challenging. um, Having a great coach to take you into a reverse diet, to really help you understand what we're trying to do is build those muscles back up again. So you've got to have more calories, you've got to have more weight on you, and that's where I'm at right now. My next show is in July, and you know, we've been kind of building. So I am up in my weight, but I'm down in my body fat, and you know, so that's really I've learned to adjust my expectations not by the number on the scale, but by different things like measurements and body fat and just my strength and my pictures, right?
Yeah. Well, I gotta say, she still looks better than 99.99% of, you know, 50-year-old women on the planet. So, you know,
Oh,
that's what
thank
I
you.
always say to people that because sometimes, like they said, bodybuilders can be, you know, you can have sometimes body dysmorphia where, you know, you think that you don't look as good, but that just goes along with, you know, the fact that if you see yourself looking the way that you do on a show, nothing really can compare to that. So it's going to be hard to realize that. But I also just absolutely love to ask because it is so varied from person to person. But when it comes to your training, how do you like is there a certain method that you like to follow, or is there a certain way that you like to train, or do you just like to mix up everything?
Well, I have a coach and I follow the plan, but you know, for me personally, I don't like doing intense hit cardio anymore. So when I first started working out again, and even back when I was younger, I was cardio all day, insanity workouts, and you know, the harder the better. Give me those plyos. Now I am so happy that my training plan does not include things like that, because this body doesn't feel so great when it starts jumping around like that. So lots and lots of strength training, a more of a steady state, low impact type of cardio. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, and that's just so awesome because, you know, a lot of people they're just like, "Oh yeah, you got to do all this cardio, you got to do all this." I mean, it's just find what works best for you because like we were talking about before, everyone is so different. But one of the myths and stereotypes that I love to bust too as well is that I mean, it's gotten better over Instagram the last 5 years, I should say, but there's still so many women that have that fear where if they go to the gym and they pick up one weight, they do one push up, one pull up, they're going to put on, you know, 50 pounds of muscle overnight. And I always say to that, you know, you'd be the first ever trillionaire. Everybody and their brother would want to buy whatever you were selling. I mean, it would just be a crazy, crazy thing. Obviously, that's not the case. But did you ever have that fear when you were getting back into fitness, or did that background really help and dispel that myth? And even if you didn't, I mean, I bet you still hear that all the time today. How do you like to respond to that?
You know, I didn't ever have that fear. I think muscle's very, very sexy on a woman. And again, myself, I mean, I'm not big. But I do hear that on occasion because I do work with women. I train women, and some of them they're convinced that, you know, if I do squats, my thighs are going to get big. That's just my body type, and body type does play into it. But you're exactly right. I mean, unless you're, you know, doing certain kinds of supplements and things like that, a woman is not going to bulk up like a man's going to bulk up.
I do have to do the asterisk though. There are those I hate them, but those one percenters that are just genetic freaks that I mean, we've had one of them on the podcast and I was like, there's no way you just did that, just doing that. She showed me she had a photo right next to her when she was like 10 years old and she had like an 8 pack and I was like, okay, that's BS. Like, yeah, okay, I guess. But
Of
yeah,
course.
yeah, I know that, but that's, you know, yeah, those are like one in a million. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, it's not going to happen. It's just,
Yeah.
it's totally not going to happen. But one of the questions that I like to add on to that, because I always say this impacts women so much more positively than it does men, is the confidence boost that working out can give you. I mean, we've heard so many stories of women who have been able to, do life-changing decisions. They've done other things that in their life just because of that confidence boost that they get. And I always say that as the one thing that you can take from working out and really add to every single aspect of your life is that confidence boost. How have you been able to take that confidence boost and use it to impact your life?
It's been an absolute game changer for me. As I said in the beginning, I mean, the stronger I got physically, the stronger I got mentally. And I just found that the confidence, I mean, I'd always, had probably some body dysmorphia when I was younger. Working out has taught me to love my body, to appreciate the size that it is. Also, I've learned a lot as body types. So like I'm a square body type. So I'm never going to have the hourglass. And it doesn't matter how much I work out, but I'm okay because I know that it's not something I'm doing wrong. It's just the way I am. So learning to love my body has been a really big part of getting mentally strong with working out.
That is so important too, because we've heard so many stories about how, people, they don't work on the mental aspect as opposed to the physical, where they just think, hey, if I get ripped and shredded, I'm going to feel good about myself. And I've had some of the most in shape people on the planet come on. And they're saying, like, when I got started, I still didn't feel good about myself, even though I had, like six pack and I had really big arms, because I didn't work on the mental aspect. So that's just so important too, as well. And I mean, I cannot preach that enough. But two of the questions that I love to ask, every single health and fitness guest on our podcast. For the first one, I mean, there were so many positive things that happened to me when I started working out and getting bigger and stronger. But the one negative thing is that you're going to get asked to move a lot of people's furniture. You're going to get asked to open a lot of pickle jars. I mean, I'm still at home with my parents for the next 2 months, and every time they come home with groceries, I basically have to lift the car into the driveway and carry in the groceries, being the good son that I am. But has that been a similar experience with you, where now that you've put on all of this muscle, that people just assume that you can do favors for them?
No, I'm a woman. I'm like, I'll let you men do the heavy lifting. I'm okay with that.
She's got the best of both worlds, basically. God, that's yeah.
But if I do need to be strong, I do like to flex the muscle. Say, hey, I got
Yeah,
this.
yeah, it's always good to show off and just yeah, it's like yeah, you don't work out that hard to not be able to show it off. So yeah, absolutely. But I always say being 6'3", that's always a double edged sword because no matter what, they're gonna ask the tall guy to do it. So I begrudgingly help out. But now probably my favorite question and the audience favorite, and again, it's a multi-million-dollar idea. Clothes for fit women. I mean, I always say fit guys have their own problems when it comes to clothing, but for fit women, I always say if you have like big, broad shoulders, dresses aren't your best friend. Jeans are another thing that we hear of all the time because if you have a big lower body and a small waist, jeans are not built for that. What have been some ways that you have found that you're able to compensate for your clothing options because they can be limited?
Well, I am a trained stylist, so I do. I'm trained in body type, so I've learned a lot. I mean, I have broad shoulders, I have the square waist. I've learned, certain like a top like this is going to bring my shoulders in. With a square waist, jeans are going to either they're going to fit tight or they're just going to fall off, right? Because you don't have that waist to hold them up. So um, I found really that. Again, it's another interesting thing to point out. The more muscle that I have developed, the smaller sizes I wear.
Yeah. I know that's one thing that a lot of guests have said that I just, it took me a while to figure that out. And I was like, oh, yeah, that actually does make sense because you'd think of, the bigger you got, the more bigger the dresses are. But yeah, it's just really chiseling and defining more and just really
Mhm.
getting rid of all those layers on top of it. But what would you say is probably the biggest myth and stereotype that you deal with on a daily basis from people when they look at you and they just assume things?
When it comes to bikini competition, I think that originally a lot of the people that I knew, they weren't familiar with it and they thought it was really just like a sexy thing, like this is overly sexual. And as a mom and a wife, that's just not, the playing card that I want to put out there. But again, even my husband has been very supportive and he said, that the amount again of work and effort and training and discipline that goes into this. So I really love to play up the fact that this is a sport and I'm an athlete. And just like a baseball player has a uniform, I have a uniform. And my uniform is really tiny and has sequins and rhinestones all over it, but that's my uniform.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more on that. And sort of going off that too, I mean, looking the way that you look, you are going to get some stares sometimes when you go out in public. I mean, if it's not the norm, it's just human nature to sometimes look. Has that been weird for you getting used to that adjustment? That I mean, sort of because a lot of times people who weren't in shape, I mean, they're able to blend in and whatnot, and they don't get paid much attention to. But once they really get super strong, I mean, people tend to look. Has that been a weird adjustment for you?
I think that the it's not been a weird adjustment, but I do like it when people notice. People come up and say, "Oh, your arms look amazing." I mean, for me, that's just a huge compliment. I mean, don't be looking at my booty. Don't be, it's my arms,
Yeah.
So when people say that, I think it's a big compliment. I'm like, yeah, thanks.
And that's awesome. And yeah, like I always say, the vast majority of stuff that we get is usually positive or confirmation that people give for other people. But yeah, there's always sometimes that negative stuff. But yeah, that's just a lot of times it's just jealousy and people just doing all that other stuff and whatnot. But being
Well,
that you,
that shows up on social
oh
media.
yeah, that too.
The
Yeah,
the comments about, "Oh, you're too bony," or, "You look sick." I'm like, "Eh."
yeah. No, yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's just a great way to deal with it. But what advice do you have, especially for older people, since you did reinvent yourself at 40? Is there any specific advice for people of that age group or people in the older variety of how to get back in shape because they deal with a whole lot of different problems as opposed to someone who's 24 like me? I mean, I would probably have an easier time getting back into shape than someone who's 40.
Mhm. Yeah, and I actually specialize in working with women that are over 40. And my biggest message that I'm passionate about is, this is the second half of our life. Our life is not halfway over. It's only halfway begun. And so definitely with hormones and things like that, we have different issues. But here's the thing. Our body can still be fit, it can still lose weight, but just like our bodies are different than they were when they're 20, we have to do different things than when we were 20. And so it's just figuring out what those different things are. And, I so passionately want women in this season of life to know that they can be just as amazing as they want to be. They can keep dreaming, again, whether it's career, relationships, health, fitness, they can be anything they want to be. They still have half their life yet to accomplish these things.
Absolutely. And that's just such an important message to have, especially in this day and age when, I mean, people are living so much longer to just realize that, like, hey, 40 or 50, I mean, yeah, you still have a long ways to go and you can still make your life so much more better for yourself. And yeah, just finding those individual things like we always have talked about this whole podcast, with genetics, everyone is different, but just finding that and just being able to use that to your advantage is so important as well. But we also, I love to ask, because when you're on Instagram, I mean, you see all these posts about, like, oh, my weight loss transformation. Oh, that's so great and whatnot. And it is great, but we never hear what it's like for the person who's behind that, the trainer or the person who guided that person. What is that feeling like for you, knowing that you've helped people and you've worked with people lose weight and achieve their goals? Does that make everything worthwhile for you?
I think it's actually one of the most important things that we can do. I mean, taking care of other people and helping them be healthier, it is the gift that constantly forever will be given. And yeah, it makes me feel amazing and it's motivating to me. I mean, that's one of the things that keeps me motivated. They ask me, "How do you stay motivated and how have you stayed motivated for so long?" Well, it's, working with other people and helping them on their journey helps hold me accountable to my own journey. So it's absolutely a circle. I get as much benefit out of it as I hope that my clients get.
Yeah, and that's just such an important attitude to have. And I really do think, like you said, that everyone should be at least doing something to help out others because there is no better feeling in the world than knowing that you really helped out someone achieve their goals. But now we go to our audience favorite, my favorite part of the podcast, a little questionnaire where we're going to ask Deborah about a half dozen or so questions and see how her answers stack up to everyone else that we've had on the podcast. So, for our first question, what is your go to workout song at the moment?
Well, Ryan, I have a playlist on Spotify called Deb's Abs Jams. And I'm telling you, that whole playlist is my go to. I've got just anything from, I've got Mandisa, I've got Bruno Mars, I've got Haley Seinfeld, Megan Trainor, Sean Paul, anything that I hear. that just pumps me up goes onto that playlist because I like to dance and I like to jam.
See, I am more old school though, because I gotta have my '80s music. I gotta have my cheesy '80s, like my Journey and my Whitesnake and all those other cheesy bands. Or like if I know I'm doing a leg day, I gotta have like a Metallica. I gotta get really heavy metal in there just to motivate myself to be able to do that. But I have a problem. So I have a gym at home, like I was talking about. So I work out half the time there. But when I go to a normal gym, I gotta wait for the beat to drop when I'm
Yeah.
working out. So I'll have times like I'm doing like a lat pull down, and then all of a sudden I'll be standing there for like 30 seconds, and then I've had guys come up to me and be like, "Hey, dude, are you all right? Did you like pull out your back or something?" It's like, nope, just waiting for the beat to drop. So I am known throughout the gym as the guy that waits for the beat to drop. But hey, I take that with pride.
That's right.
But now, what is one item that you always need to have in your fridge?
In my fridge, I would say it's turkey bacon.
This whole damn podcast, you've been making me super hungry now with the Diet Coke and now with the turkey bacon. Oh, that just sounds delicious. The most
Yeah,
shocking answer for me has been mustard because I would have never guessed that in a million years because it's 0 calories, 0 fat, so they douse it on everything. But yeah, I would. That's something that I would not go to that extreme because I am a team ketchup guy all the way. But now, out of all of your followers that you have on Instagram, what do you think would be the most surprising thing that they'd find out about you if they met you in person?
um, they probably know this because I talk about it a lot, but I am a huge introvert. I am almost to the point of antisocial. So yeah, I can get on Instagram stories and I'll dance and I'll groove and I can get on a stage and wear a bikini, but I am just very introverted.
I might have to even do like write up a story or something about that because there's been so many guests that that,
Yeah.
that say that, and it's like you're willing to go up on stage in a bikini and pose in front of people, and then you're an introvert. But I think that's true with actually like a lot of performers too. Like a lot of these big singers or big celebrities, they're really just introverts that just that's their one outlet where they can go up on stage. But yeah, that's definitely something that I think is really really shocking too. And another one that we get all the time is that like people think that people are a lot bigger on their Instagram than when they meet them in person, and then they're like, oh, okay, you don't look like Dwayne the Rock Johnson or something like
Yeah.
that like you look on your Instagram. But yeah, that's one that we get to a lot. But now if someone were to walk up to you and say, Deborah, we made the decision, you can change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding and everyone would go along with it, what would be one thing that you would like to see changed?
Oh my goodness. Gosh, I think I don't know what it would be. Maybe just the overall perception that, again, that we're just a bunch of like sexy women parading around in heels. I mean, and maybe do a public service campaign or something that kind of really promotes more of the athletic side of it.
Oh, 100%. Because, yeah, there is still that myth. And, that's why I love having these podcasts because I love to try and bust that along with plenty of other myths. But, yeah, I would definitely say that as well. But now, what is your favorite body part to train and least favorite body part to train?
Well, I really do love training my lower body. Although recently it's been a lot harder. I think the workouts are a lot harder, but I love training my lower body. I'm leg day all day, every day. My least favorite body part to train, I don't like doing like lat
Oh, yeah.
raises. I just don't like them at all. I make that ugly face.
Yeah. Well, no, yeah, and I'm one of those people too where I make an ugly face. So I even tell people, I was like, if we're working out together, don't look at me when I'm working out. You're not gonna like what you see. But now a question that I wasn't really part of this, but what kind of dogs do you have? Because I thought, do you have a Cavalier King Charles or a Bashan?
No, we have three dogs. We have a Shih Tzu,
Oh, that's what it is. Yeah.
yes, and we have a Rottweiler, and we have a Weimaraner Pinscher Lab mix.
Because I was gonna say right before I do a podcast with someone, I usually just scroll through their Instagram just to get a little more familiar. And I thought, see, Shih Tzus and Cavachons always
Yeah.
get mixed up. So yeah, when I saw that, I was like, oh, does she have a Cavachon? Because that's what we have. So then I was like,
Uh,
oh yeah, that would be cool. But yeah, Shih Tzus. I mean, we see that, and it's a really really cute dog, and I encourage everyone to go and check that out. But now, out of all the things that you've done with the sport of bodybuilding, what is the thing that you're most proud of?
I'm most proud of being courageous enough to step on stage at the age of 50. I mean, again, doing something I never ever thought I would be strong enough to do, and then doing it, and just the way my body has changed. I'm incredibly proud of the muscle that I've developed and the fact that I went from being fit to being extraordinarily
Yeah.
fit. I'm proud of that. It's hard work and I'm very proud of it.
I was gonna say everyone, yeah, just look at her. I mean, look at those arms. I mean, good God. I mean, they're just, yeah, it's just unbelievable what she's been able to accomplish at that age. But if we were to go through like a week of your training, how does that week go? What is your average, or do you like to mix it up week by week?
Um, I like I said, I get a weekly training schedule. I typically do legs 3 days, upper body 3 days. Right now, I'm doing, and I walk anywhere from 13 to 15,000 steps a day. And then my cardio right now is 20 minutes 3 times a week of incline lunges on the treadmill.
That is a lot. Yeah, that's really impressive. But going on in the questionnaire, if we were to talk to you a year from today, what would you like to have accomplished in your bodybuilding career? What would you like to have accomplished in just your overall life? What are some goals that you would like to see accomplished if we were to talk to you a year from today?
Well, in my bodybuilding career, my goal would be to place, well, it would be to be a pro, a master's pro, and then also to be competitive, to place top five in an open or novice. Well, I won't be novice anymore, but an open competition. I want to be able to compete, not just with the older ladies, but with everybody. And then from a life perspective, I'm working on developing a course, a digital course for women, again in their 40s, 50s, 60s. So my dream is that that will be all launched by this time next year, and women will be enjoying it and getting lots of benefit from it.
That is so awesome, and just give us a shout out if when that does get launched, and I'd be happy to talk about it. But yeah, it's just that's just awesome. And now, if you were able to go back in time and talk to the 18-year-old version of yourself, what would be the best piece of advice you would give her?
The best piece of advice would be that this little microcosm world of high school, college is not the whole world. I struggled a lot in high school and college, just, with social issues. And, at times when you're that age, you think that these people are everything. And the world is so big, and there's so many opportunities, and it will always get better. Just keep pushing forward.
I couldn't honestly agree with you more on that, because that is one thing that I also struggled with too, is just realizing also too that you don't have to be a huge people pleaser, because not everyone that you are going to try to please is going to really dig your vibe. So yeah, I mean, when you said that, I was like, "Oh my God, yeah, if I could just go and just basically just strangle myself and just be like, you need to realize this." But yeah, that's definitely one thing that I would like to see change. But how is also your friends and family's reaction? I mean, we talked about it a little bit, but how has their reaction been when you decided to make this change and adapt this lifestyle? Has it been positive all the way, or was it something that they had to sort of get used to and then they really support it?
Well, my family's been very supportive of my fitness journey, of course. I mean, when I started working out, my husband and I did it together. And through the years, our children, I think, really saw what we were doing. And so they became very physically active and physically fit and very aware of good health and nutrition. When I decided to do competition, I think my family was a little, I won't say skeptical, but they were guarded. They just weren't sure that it was going to be the best thing for me with my, past tendencies and things like that. But they have definitely become my biggest supporters. My husband he's my rock. He's super proud of me, and that just makes me so happy.
Like we've said a million times on this podcast, it's just so important to have that support too, because we've had people that have tried to go at it alone, and good luck to them on that. So yeah, I mean, it's just that support is so important. But is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Well, obviously, I want to give a shout out to my husband because, like I said, I couldn't do any of this without him. We do, our word of the year on our mantra band is together, and that's really kind of how we approach life: faith, family, fitness, everything. So, shout out to John Baska.
John Baska, again, we give a shout out to that. And again, we cannot thank you enough, Deborah, for coming on. I mean, it was so great talking to you and hearing your journey. And lastly, I mean, this question I ask to every single person. For so many people, just getting that first step in the gym, it can be so difficult for them when it comes to just starting their journey, because taking that first step, I mean, they're really just letting go and they're kind of giving it a shot. And a lot of times people delay that. Like I used to be one of those guys where I'd say, like, oh, I'll work out on Monday if it's a Friday because, it's the start of a week. So I just keep making those excuses. But just being able to go in the gym and get started, I mean, it's hard to walk out of the gym once you walk into it. What are some tips and tricks that you like to tell people just to be able to start their journey and have that mindset?
Well, of course, I started my journey with at home fitness. And for me, I think it's number one, having an accountability partner. and then having a plan. So with all the plans that we do with our at-home workouts, there's a schedule, and I am the kind of person that if Monday is, leg day, and then tomorrow is arms day, I'm going to follow that schedule because I don't want to fall behind. And I don't have to wake up every day and wonder, well, what am I going to do? Should I do this or should I do that? It's just there. So I think, planning is everything, and having that partner is also everything. And for me, having a really cute workout outfit is huge motivation. So get yourself some cute duds, lay them out, and put them on, because once you put your workout clothes on, you are not going to not work out.
That's true. I mean, yeah, that's the one thing that I really think I appreciate the most about, the society being more accepting towards women, working out with strength training, is that they have added a lot of flavor and a lot of color to the gym. Because let's face it, before that, gyms were just guys in
Yeah.
sweatpants and, just weird shirts. And then it was not really a good sight to see. But yeah, they've definitely added a lot of color and a lot of flair to it. So if anything, that is probably a very positive thing. But again, you guys, we cannot thank Deborah enough for getting on this podcast and talking about her journey. I highly recommend everyone go and give her a follow. She has really great workouts that you can follow and that you can adapt in your own life, and tips as well as nutrition. She does a lot of positive things that I really, really enjoy. And if you're in the Kansas City area and you want to maybe have someone help you out, I definitely recommend contacting her. I'll leave a link to that stuff down below as well. And Deborah, we cannot thank you enough for coming on. It was great to hear you and share your journey.
Thank you so much. It was nice to meet you.
Absolutely. Well, again, you guys, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.